On this edition of the Journey with James show, we're continuing our conversation with Dr. Brian Sutton. He is the therapist for Us Therapeutics. He's the co-founder of that practice along with his brother. And so we're continuing our conversation that we had last week. We talked a little bit about his childhood, his journey to becoming a therapist, his military background, fatherhood, the importance of mentorship, and so much more. Today, we're going to dive deeper, more into that conversation, and we're going to also have your answers to some questions that some viewers submitted as it deals with mental health and some things you wanted to know from a therapist. So sit back and relax and join me as we continue our conversation with Dr. Brian Sutton. Walk with me on this journey as I share transparent stories of my life and others. We'll explore the ups and the downs, failures and successes, offering each other hope and advice that can help you on your journey. Fun, laughter, thought-provoking convos, trending stories, and interviews. It's the Journey with James show. Important for the Black community, what you're doing, that we put that out there, that it's not about holding it in and not, I have some people, some family members, they say, when we're younger, you don't say anything that's going on in this house, you keep it in, and what happens is you build on trauma and nothing gets done. And so I say this is a game changer because you're focusing on the Black community and we identify, like you understand, and I think people are more comfortable in coming out and, reaching out to you.
Oh, yeah. You're
a stigma with the Black community for a long time.
You're 1,000% correct. Like, it does resonate with people. Like I laugh when you said that because I have a couple clients that be like, "Where'd you grow up at? Where'd you hang around at?" Because I needed someone I could really
taking you out first.
Yeah, I needed someone I could really talk to about real Black issues. Like, Are you with the struggle? Or you not with the struggles? Like, I've had questions like that. And to your point, I like how you articulated it because it made me think about this. God put it in my spirit to say, it's a phrase that I created and I love it. The voice you try to ignore during the day gets louder at night. The things that you try to run away from, the things you don't deal with, they come up at night. The reason why I say at night is because usually at nighttime, your mental energy and mental faculties are winding down. Right. Self-control gets a little tiresome. It gets a little cumbersome. The willpower that you use to try to keep things under control is diminishing. So that's why, like when you said that you go and process and you were getting affected by traumas you didn't even know, that is a real thing. There's some people out there trying to avoid things that they don't want to deal with out of fear because they're worried about how it's going to impact them. The beauty of therapy is this: is one, you don't have to have a severe mental health issue or crises to see a therapist. Usually how I like to explain to people is this: it's literally professional processing. That's what it is at its core. I'm creating a healthy environment and a relationship with you where you can use this relationship to pull out and unpack things that have been buried inside. And people are often surprised within just the first session of what they realize, what comes out of them. And that's the beauty of it, because in the Black community, I think it's just a lot of miseducation and just pure ignorance about mental health. And I don't mean ignorance in a negative sense, it's just the lack of knowledge, because it's been told to the Black community that, in order for you to see a doctor, you got to have something really, really wrong. No. That's far from the truth. Sometimes you just need certain tools, techniques to how to navigate anger, depression, anxiety, or you just need someone to listen to you because you don't know what that's like to be heard. Especially among Black men. Black men, one of the most common things that I hear from therapy with them is that I actually felt heard in this session. Sometimes people just want to be heard. They want to be seen. Women love to be validated, to let them know that their perspective is not off, it's not crazy. It's like letting them know I can see where you're coming from. So it really is a safe space, or the therapist should be making it a safe space for you to rediscover yourself.
So what do you tell the people that are a little sketchy about it in the Black community right now, who may be watching and they're a little bit like, I don't know. What do you say to them?
I would say this is that you have every right to be sketchy. You have every right to be skeptical. And I would never tell you not to be sketchy or not be skeptical. I would ask you to ask yourself, where is that coming from? Is that sketchiness or skepticism coming from people telling that to you? Or is it coming from a place of fear? And if it is a place of fear, what are you worried about? Is it you're worried about being vulnerable with someone you know? Are you worried that you may discover that there's something really, really wrong? You have to identify the place of where it's coming from. Keep your skepticism. I would say keep it and then ask yourself where it's coming from. Another thing I would say is you can always reach out to a therapist and just ask them, like, what do I expect? What can I expect from treatment with you? That's why I create, or with my Facebook and Instagram, I created a space where if you have a question, you can just DM me the question. People have done that. James, you DM me. People will DM me questions. Now, I can't give them like actual therapeutic treatment for ethical reasons, right? Because I wouldn't want to trigger somebody's trauma and now I can't see them. But there have been questions as far as like, what if somebody's dealing with this? I would tell you should talk to a therapist about it. What if someone rather pray than talk to a therapist? You can pray. There's nothing wrong with that. I would say talk to your pastor though. At the bare minimum, I would say there's always healing in conversation, but it depends on who you get the conversation from. If you don't want to come to a therapist, that's fine. You don't have to. I would say use other resources and tools at your disposal. Do you have a good support group? Do you have a good friend group? And I'm not talking about the friends that'll just be down to do anything or just lie to you and tell you what you want to hear. Like, do you have honest friends who make you feel heard? Can you go to your pastor? Try those options first. And then if those options run out, look for a therapist that resonates with you. Look for one that potentially even looks like you. A lot of times Black people try to look for a Black therapist, rightfully so. We have different struggles than our white counterparts do because the majority of the field of mental health is littered with particularly white females. And it's not that they can't help, but the apprehension among Black people to see a white therapist is real and should be validated. Yes. Are they going to understand where I'm coming from? Are they going to invalidate my struggle? Are they going to fully see it through my lens? So you have the right to ask those questions. I would say at the bare minimum, use the tools you have, figure out where this hesitation is coming from, or reach out to a therapist and ask questions. A lot of them are busy, especially if you're Black and you're looking for a Black therapist. We all booked up, right? However, some of us will respond to the email. We really will. If you DM me, if you have a question about it, you can DM me. I'll do my best to get to it. It won't be fast.
But you will.
But I will get to it. I promise you.
Yeah. And I would say that's a game changer in itself as well, because you're giving people the opportunity to talk to someone in a professional setting for free, and you give them something. And I think that's a start. That plants a seed for them, really. You don't realize it. It plants a seed for them to maybe want to go further and maybe want to get services from you or just someone in the area, whatever. And so I'm glad to be connected to you, man. That's just it's a game changer, and it's great the things that you're doing for the Black community because we need that. We need that. You think about COVID and different things that's going on in the world now, prices going, inflation, all kinds of stuff that we are dealing with, and to have that, we can go out and get that help we need. I think it's good that we broadcast that and that we talk about it, let them know that we understand. I understand, you understand, everybody understands we're in this together. That's the whole premise of Journey with James. My slogan is, why not encourage, why not motivate, why not inspire one another in this walk of life? We're all in it together, so why not push one another? And so we share each other's stories in hopes that it will help one another to be better versions of ourselves, because we're continually growing, we're continually healing. But hey, why not have that? Because community is important. Community is very, very important.
Very much so.
And so I have some questions from some viewers, and I was quite impressed when I asked about that. The questions came quick because I guess people really, really, really want to know, and they want that help. But before I get to that question, I want to ask you, I want you to go back to your childhood, and I want you to answer this question. What would you tell your little self? Let's say you're 12 years old. What would you tell yourself, the little boy?
We did it. I would tell them we did it. I'm blessed. And I really will give all glory and grace to God, or glory and honor to God for his grace on this one. I became, if I can bump it up a little bit, right? Can I bump it up from 12 to the boy in high? Because in high school, I was like, I'm going to become a mental health therapist. I was going to become a doctor, right? I was like, I'm going to do this. I would tell him we did it. I would tell him that, yeah, of course there were different options we could have taken, but don't change anything because you really had to go through everything to become the person that sitting across from James right now. Um, I would say love yourself more though, and learn how to love yourself. I would definitely say that, but ultimately I would say we did it. God has really blessed me to allow me to become the man that I wanted to be because there's a scripture that I live by. I discovered it as an adult, not as a child. It's your gift will make room for you and put you in the presence of kings. That is my favorite scripture in the Bible because I live my life predicated on it. I look at counseling and teaching as my two gifts. So I double down, quadruple down, 10 toes down on both of them. I walked away from my government job to pursue this and I don't regret it. So I live my life by that gift. And what I try to do is what I told you earlier is I treat therapy the same way Kobe Bryant treated the NBA. I'm looking to be the best therapist we've ever seen. But in order to be the best, I have to help as many people as I possibly can. So for me, I live my life by that scripture. So I try to dedicate as much time as I can to being a better therapist. That's why I'm comfortable in helping people and dealing with so many situations. When I'm not seeing clients and handling the business or having a private practice or teaching students, I'm literally reading a book on therapy, working on a research article about therapy, reading more books about therapy, taking online trainings about it. It just doesn't stop because that's how dedicated I am. So I would actually go back to that little boy in high school and tell him, we did it. Keep going. You're on the right path. But to the 12-year-old me, to your point, I would say, just learn to love yourself a little bit more. Don't be so hard on yourself. Learn to love yourself, son.
Man, that's incredibly good. I like that. I like that. And we have more of this conversation coming up after this quick break. Stay with us. You're watching the Journey with James show. Turning into all God has for me. In the process, confronting fears. Letting go of worry. Investing in others. Embracing God's peace. Being completely me. It's my journey. The Journey with James. Be encouraged. Be motivated. Be inspired. Transparency. James is worth. You are worthy. You are significant. James, it's okay. It's okay to be different. In the days, in the years after, how has the situation changed you?
I think overall you become more appreciative of the people that you have in your life. You love more. You live in the moment.
Encouragement and inspiration. I am very blessed to have this brother as my friend. Some people come into your life and you don't expect things and, friendships or whatever, but this happened naturally. Our friendship is a natural thing and is a good thing, man. He is my boy, man. He is a good guy. And I'm not saying that just to be saying it, but he's like that with everybody. Motivation.
The pandemic really just made me realize we do not have a lot of time. That when you really understand that, you start to do the things that you know that you've been called to do.
It's the Journey with James show. I like that. All right, so I have 4 questions for you. Let me go to it now. One of the first questions, I thought I wouldn't say their names or anything. How do we set healthy boundaries in our relationships with family and friends?
That's a good question. Healthy boundaries is something that comes up in therapy all the time. It's more so you have to ask yourself this question, right? This is a good way of answering it. Granted, in a therapeutic session, I can give more detail, but what goal are you trying to achieve with this boundary? Are you trying to stop something, or are you trying to gain something, or are you trying to communicate something? You first have to identify clearly what you want, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is this. Look at how you want to go about setting that boundary. Usually setting a boundary requires a conversation, right? So when it comes to family members, this is where it's important. If it's a random person in the street, you set the healthy boundary right then and there. No, I'm not doing that. No, don't do that to me. No, I don't want to talk about it, right? And you just keep it moving because there's no real connection there. With your family, though, depending on which family member it is and how much you value their relationship or your connection with them, you do have to have a conversation. There has to be a little bit of a negotiation there. So for instance, depending on what your goal is, let's say I pick something random, like you don't want to talk about politics with them because it gets on your nerves, right? Or you don't want to talk about religion with them because you and them have a different faith and it bothers you, right? You could, if that is your goal, to stop conversations about that, you can easily go to them because you love them and you want to maintain a relationship in other areas. Hey, look, I noticed that when we talk about this, I get upset. I feel some type of way. I get bothered. So moving forward, because I don't want to be upset, I don't want to be bothered, and I would rather talk about other things with you, I'd rather just not have this discussion with you anymore because those conversations make me upset. Notice there I use what we call an I statement. An I statement really helps you to communicate because the word you naturally makes people defensive. The moment that somebody points at you and say you automatically put your guard up, like you did this, you make me feel this way. The issue that you run into with that is that human beings are hedonistic in nature. They seek pleasure, they avoid pain. I cannot be the bad guy in my story. So when you say I'm now in a place of anxiousness. I'm not comfortable because you're telling me I did something wrong. I cannot be the bad guy in your story or my story. So they don't hear you. They start to defend themselves. So I would say have a conversation, negotiate the boundary depending on what it is, and just try to use a simple I statement. You can Google how to use I statements on your own. You don't necessarily got to go to a therapist to do that, but it will take practice. You have to practice using the I statement. So know what boundary you want to set and then figure out how you want to have that conversation with them.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So another question was, what strategy do you use to promote? Well, you just pretty much showed some healthy boundaries. So we're not going to go to that question because you just said those. So the next question is, what's the best way to heal after heartbreak? And how do you get out of the mindset that every man will be the same? So this is from a female. What's the best way to heal after heartbreak? And how do you get out of the mindset that every man will be the same? That's a very good question.
That is actually a really, really good question. So how do you heal after heartbreak? Is this, I always recommend people, depending on how long you've been together, you need to take a break, right? So when you're saying heartbreak, that means you was in a serious relationship. So let's say you was in a relationship for a year to a year and a half, but we'll just stick with a year because it's easier to do math. You were with this person for a year, okay? You need to take a break. I know a lot of times your friends will come to you and tell you, just go find somebody else, go find another one, get up under another one or get on top of another, whatever it may be, right? That's not necessarily good advice because you're avoiding dealing with your emotions. So the reason why I recommend taking a break is you have to come to terms with the reality of the situation you're dealing with. And by that, I mean, you need to sit and grieve the loss. Because remember what I said earlier, James, the voice you try, the whisper you try to ignore during the day gets louder at night.
Yes.
The human imagination was a really, really great gift God gave us. It's how we propel forward, it's how we create things, but it's also the devil's playground, right? So instead of you grieving a loss, you're out here trying to distract yourself instead of dealing with it. And then ultimately, when all the fun is said and done, all of a sudden you start missing them. You start wondering if they're with somebody else. That process is going to happen regardless. So instead of going out to, date in a period where you're not necessarily ready, sit and come to terms with the reality. It doesn't mean that you like it or you agree with it, but you got to go through the emotions. You got to go through feeling the sadness, feeling the hurt, the disappointment, feeling the grief, then feeling the anxiety about, will I find somebody else? If it was a matter of infidelity, overcoming your insecurities if those things had manifest, dealing with the anger of being let down, the anger of feeling betrayed. There's a whole lot of emotions that come with a breakup. You have to sit with them. Now, Brian, you mean you want me to just sit in a dark room and just feel everything? That's not necessarily what I'm saying. What I'm recommending is you can easily get a journal and write it out. People underestimate the power of journaling because what happens is a lot of thoughts are running through your head at one time. You need to sit down and write down what you're feeling and what you're thinking. That will help to get it out of you and onto paper. That part helps the process. You're going to go through this process, but writing it down will help to expedite it. Also, another thing you can do is you can literally see a therapist if the breakup is bad enough. That expedites the healing process as well. Having somebody that you can talk to and someone that can hear you out. Another thing that you should do when you're sitting as well after a hard breakup, when you're sitting and you're journaling or you're sitting journaling going to a therapist, is this: find areas of growth from the past relationship. Look back at it and see what you can learn, where you can grow from, what areas can you take responsibility for. What went wrong in that relationship that you didn't like? What are some of the things you discovered about yourself in that relationship? There's areas of growth that you can focus on, so you don't just necessarily sit with the pain of loss and sit and just grieve. There's a period where you got to focus on what you want in the future, because now there's a loss. It didn't quite work out the way you want. Okay, what was I looking for and what did I get? What was the disconnect? That's something you could focus on while going through the breakup. Now, to the second part of the question, and I want to make sure I remember correctly. She said, "How do you not hate all men?" Or what was it again?
Yeah. So she said, and how do you get out of the mindset that every man will be the same?
That is a fair question. You just challenge that mindset, right? Like, for instance, the person who asked that question, that is a fair mindset, because what that person's probably doing right now is they're generalizing their pain to all men, because they can't get back at that man. Now, all men are a problem, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. I can respect where she's coming from with that question, because that is a real thing. But what it is more so just her challenging that thought, like, are all men the same? No, we're all very, very different. More so redirecting the issue back to the source. It's not that all men are bad. That man was bad. But what made him bad in your eyes? So I want to go back just a little bit to, what were you looking for? What did you get? Because that's the thing that made it bad. I think challenging that thought and that mindset by looking at it in a more balanced way. And I'm going to give everybody a cheat sheet, because I've talked about it in my videos. So specifically for this question, if that's the mindset you want to overcome, you just ask yourself this question: what evidence do I have to support this thought? What evidence do I have to go against it? That will keep you from sinking and creating a belief system, because what she's talking about when she says mindset, it's more truth to it than I think even she may know. If that is your mindset, that statement sounds to me like a rule and a belief system, depending on what, in therapy, it could be one and the same. A belief and a rule are the guidelines that you operate under. So that one stage, that all men are the same. So all men are the same. Well, what is the same? NIGGAs ain't SHIT sometimes, is what they say, right? All men are dogs. Let's just say that to keep it clean. All men are dogs. So now that they're running around with this rule, so what happens is when you encounter a man, you're being suspicious. You think he's going to do you dirty. You think he's going to do you wrong. You just created a new rule for yourself. So what you do is you challenge that rule. You look at it in a balanced way. That's just what it comes down to. It's that simple. You challenge it by asking the right questions.
I like that. Man, that's good. Mm-hmm. All right. So my last question, or the last question that was asked, is, how can you best determine when your client is no longer needs your services?
Well, clients, I ain't going, James, not gonna lie, you, clients don't want to leave. They want to stay. You can tell them, like, you got a whole wait list. They're like, I don't care. I'm never leaving you, right?
Right.
There's when the clinical way is when we have achieved your treatment goals and you don't have any more treatment goals. So what it is, let's say that, using your client that gave her example, she's going through a breakup. All right, so what do you want to get out of therapy, right? I want to be able to process the relationship, and I want to get over my sadness and my anxiety. We iron that out to make it more specific. What does processing your relationship look like? What does getting over your sadness look like? What does getting over your anxiety look like? You get to develop the treatment plan with me. We just make it more tangible. Once we tick off each and every one of them, we revisit it. Is there anything else you need? Nah, not really. That's usually it. So then in that way, in a more formal way, it's time to, graduate you from therapy. Because I don't like to say cancel or conclude or terminate it, because you can always come, at least with Us Therapeutics, you can always come back. So for instance, when you graduate from therapy with us, at least with my clients or my caseload, I won't speak for the other clinicians or my younger brother, but of my clients or my caseload, they know that if you graduate, you reserve the right to come back. If there's an opening slot, I will give it to you, or I will put you on a wait list and I'll pick you up on the next opening slot if it matches your time, right? But we rather say graduate because therapy doesn't end just because sessions are over with. It's a lifelong process. What I hope to give people and what most clinicians hope to give people are the tools to help you navigate life. Are there times where you may need to come back? Of course there are. Yeah, definitely are. So you can come back. So we like to graduate you. That's the more formal way of recognizing when they need to be done. The other way is more informal, where you would make it to every session on time without fail. All of a sudden, schedule get a little busy. You show up, you ain't got much to talk about, or we're repeating the same thing. And after a while, I go, all right, so what do you want to work on? They ain't got nothing for me. Okay,
Right.
it's time for you to go out and be great and go do great stuff. And I don't want to go. I know you don't want to go. It's because you're comfortable right now. We talked about that. You're comfortable in here. Now you got to take it and go out there and try it on your own without having to meet with me next week. The ideal way is understanding that they've hit their treatment goals. We've helped them manage their situation, and there's nothing else to work on. The informal way is you're getting in a real good space. You ain't showing up on time like you used to. You say, hey, Dr. B, go ahead, charge me that late cancellation fee. This is the second time in a row now. The third time you go back on the wait list. There's formal and informal ways of going about it. Ultimately, what it comes down to is, have we hit your treatment goals, and do you have anything else to discuss? If not, there's somebody else that was in just as bad shape as you were when you came in. I got to give them the spot so I can help them as well.
Yeah. I have certainly been empowered by this conversation today, and I know that other people will be empowered. So I want to know, just last question, what are some words of encouragement you have for people out there? Just anything you want to encourage them with?
The one thing that I would want to encourage people with this is that you are good enough. You are worthy. You deserve every great thing in the world. The thing that gets in your way is it's mainly how you think and look at yourself. You got to be cautious with what you speak into yourself about yourself, just as much as you got to be cautious as what you look at and speak about things in your life. It's a two-way street. Don't try to always speak positivity about everybody else, and don't always try to speak negativity about everybody else, and don't speak negativity about yourself. Try to mix in some positivity in there. You are worthy. You deserve to be loved. You deserve all good things. Just guard your heart as well as your mind. Be cautious with how you look at life. That's what I would say to people.
Okay. All right. So how can people connect with you, and even with your therapy company? How can they connect with you there as well?
So we're on all the platforms. You can just type in For Us Therapeutics. You'll find us there. It's literally For Us, FORUS Therapeutics, or just type in For Us. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We don't necessarily have a TikTok, but we should get one. You can also check out our website at forustherapeutics.org. And also, you can shoot me a DM at Brian Sutton. It's Brian Sutton on all my platforms. On Instagram, it's Dr. Brian Sutton. On Facebook, it's just Brian Sutton. You can shoot me a DM, and I can send you whatever information you need. You can shoot us an email at info@forustherapeutics.org. Just do your best to try to contact us, because we're there on all major platforms, and one of us or one of our staff members to get back to you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. It has been a blessing.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. It's been a blessing to be on here.
Wow, such great nuggets that we can use from Dr. B that can help us in our journey in taking care of ourselves mentally. Mental health is important. I can't stress it enough. Taking care of yourself is so important. So I hope this interview, this two-part interview, has really helped and resonated with you, and that will help you as you journey on in life and improving and becoming a better you. You are special. You are something special, because God created something beautiful in you. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of The Journey with James. Come on back next week. We have some more good conversations with some good people as we journey in life together. Why not encourage? Why not inspire? Why not motivate one another in this thing called life? I mean, we're in it together, right? That's right. Take care, God bless, and enjoy the remainder of your week.